And who would like to go first?
I'm going to go and I'll come back a little bit later.
Okay. I see Adrian's joining now too.
Yay.
Do you have a story to tell tonight, Elizabeth?
No.
Yeah, I have a small story.
Do you want to start, or Ron, do you want to start?
Elizabeth, you could practice for Sunday.
Well, I think what I'll do is I will tell first, and then I will take the Zoom meeting back to the bedroom away from the
natural
living room
world
so they
is
can go back
lining
to
up
life.
to support you.
Thank you.
You said.
Okay, so I'm gonna spotlight Ron, and Ron will tell first. So get the spotlight on him, and then everybody mute themselves.
I created this story out of two different cultures and backgrounds. It comes from the famous Russian tale of Babushka Follows the King, and an Armenian tale called The First Fir Tree. And I combined them together and created a story that I call King for a Camel. And I haven't told it in 3 years, so we'll see how this goes. And old Babushka sat in her home, after dark, late in winter. As she was sitting there thinking about what she might do the next day, which would be what she had done the day before or the month before, a voice seemed to come out of the night saying, Babushka, in 3 days, important visitors will come to you. You must get ready. Babushka looked around. There was no one there, of course. And she thought, what a strange dream. But I'm not really, well, I don't know what it means, but it can't mean anything because no one would visit me this late in winter. And so she went off to bed and got up the next day, but her sleep had been a little disturbed and she was having a hard time concentrating on her daily activities. Of course, she still had to feed the chickens and the goats and the sheep and had to take care of the animals such as they were. She was sitting out in the barn, having just finished her chores, sat down for just a moment and maybe went off to sleep when a voice came and said, Babushka, in 2 days, important visitors will come. You must get ready. She looked around and there was nothing there and she couldn't understand how it could have been. And she thought, oh, you are losing your mind. That's all it is. And so she did nothing, but she had a very hard time sleeping that day, that night. She was sitting in her kitchen, wide awake, just getting ready for breakfast, when the voice came again. Babushka, important visitors are coming to see you tonight. You must get ready. She thought, get ready? Who would visit me this late in winter? No one visits here. I take eggs down to the, but no one comes out here this time of year. Visitors. If I must get ready for visitors, I must get ready. What will I do if they are men? I can't have men in my house all alone out here. I don't know what, I know. They can stay in the upper barn. In those days in Russia, barns were built into the sides of a hill, a dugout to dugout, and then there would be a roof above and a room above that roof where you could store grain and hay and tools and those things. Okay? And then down below was where you kept the animals at night, for the winters were very fierce. I shall clean up the upper room. It has not been used in so long, not since George died. But I shall do that. And so she went out and she opened the doors and looked around, and well, of course, the place was a mess. The rats and other creatures had scattered what hay was left up there. And there were spider webs everywhere and birds' nests on all of the rafters. And it was truly a very dirty place. And she thought, well, I'll just have to bring the brazier up and warm things up. But wait a minute, what's wrong? Where was the door that covered the round hole at the top that you used to push fodder down to the animals through? The lid was not there. This was a round room with a large hole in the middle of the floor. If she had visitors, she couldn't imagine why she would have visitors. She couldn't leave them sitting there like that. They could walk in and fall into the hole in the night and get hurt. She thought, what can I do? What can I do? What would cover that? Not anything. I know. The sheep dip pan. It is round. It should be about that size. And it will protect the people if they come, if anybody indeed comes. So she went outside and looked on the side of the barn where it should have been hanging, but it wasn't there. She looked out, and there behind the barn was sheep dip pan filled with ice. And in the center of that ice, sticking straight up, was what looked like the top of one of the pine trees, a fir tree with it just a chute down into the ice. She looked at the pan and looked at the snow-covered ground and thought, well, it'll melt, and I can move the tree. And so with great effort, she dragged it around over to the ice sled, got it inside, covered up the hole, and said, all right, the ice will melt, I'll move the tree, it'll even add some fragrance. And she went and she got a couple of charcoal braziers and lit them out to warm the room, and she began to sweep and move and take things up, and she cleaned up the room fairly decently well. And the room was beginning to feel a little warm, but it was still very chilly. She thought, I wonder if I can move the tree. But when she went to look, none of the ice had melted. It still stood straight up in the middle of the floor. How strange, she thought. But I must get ready in other ways. And she went inside to prepare the best food she could, not having any idea how many visitors they might be or how long they would stay. But she made a decent meal that would feed 4 or 5, and thought, this will have to be the best I can do. And then she waited, and it grew totally dark. And the wind died down. And the surrounding mountains seemed very still and quiet. And she thought, just what I thought. No one is coming. No one could come this way. That anybody would come up the road would have done so before sundown. And then from above her, where the mountain pass crossed through that was used by tradesmen in the summertime, came a strange sound of clop, 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 some kind of heavy horse or hoof print coming through the mountain pass. She went outside and looked up. There was something strange about the sky. It was well after dark, and yet it was almost as bright as daylight in the barnyards and around her house. It was just unbelievable how bright the sky was, and there was a star overhead. And then she heard it again, the heavy clump, clump, clump. And out of the night came 3 enormous shapes. She had no idea. She had never seen an animal as large as that or shaped like that. Did not know what she was looking at all. But the 3 shapes came forward. And one of them looked at her and said, well, old woman with the beautiful babushka on your head, the star has dropped over your house. May we stay with you a while? The star, she said. We have followed this star overhead many days, and it has stopped other places. And each time we have done so, we have done something there that was memorable. May we visit you? Well, of course, you can put your camels, madam, your camels and your donkey in the lower barn, and you can stay, put your things in there, and that's where you will stay tonight. And that was agreeable to the 3 men. When they got down off their mighty beasts, she realized these were important people. Their clothing was rich and beautiful and covered with jewels. But they didn't pay much attention to any of that. They set their camels and their workers' man's donkey inside the lower barn and closed the lower barn and put some beautiful things up and smiled at the little tree. And because some of their beautiful robes were a little wet, they took some of them off and put on drier things and then came down to Babushka's house. She had laid out the best food she had on her finest dishes. The three kings sat down. They said, "We are on a great journey. We have been following this star in the night sky for many, many, many weeks. It has led us in many directions on many different times. When people see us, some are happy, some are sad, but that is not why we journey. We are going to find the King of Kings, who will be born for all living things on earth, someplace where this star is leading us. We are going there to worship him." "That sounds truly beautiful," said the old woman. "But why would you stop here?" "We do not know. The star stopped, so we stopped." Then one of the other kings looked at her and said, "Would you like to come with us? We don't know how far the journey would be or what we will see along the way. But the star stopped here, so you are welcome to join us if you would like." "Me," thought the old babushka, "a tired old woman leaving her only home in the dead of winter, with blizzards coming soon. What would she do? And why would anybody want anything from her? Yeah, she had nothing to do with kings of kings or royalty." She said, I am honored that you asked, but I don't think I can possibly do this." They nodded, and after a little while, they went back out and settled in for the night, noticing that the little tree still stood upright in a block of ice in the middle of their now warm room. Now, in the lower barn amongst the animals had been talking. One of the camels was saying, "We are involved in a great journey. We are going to find the King of Kings, the King of all living things, the King for camels, and worship him when he is born." And the donkey said, "Yes, and of course I will worship him, for if he can be king for a camel, he can be king for a donkey." One of the sheep and her ram came forward and said, "Could we go with you? We could keep up, I'm sure." And the camel said, "All that come with an open heart are welcome to joining with us. Of course you may join us." And two goats came forward and said they wanted to join in too. And no one had an objection to king for a goat. But when two chickens came forward, the camel said, "You cannot walk as fast as we. You cannot fly as fast as we can. It is good that you want to go, but how would you manage that? We can fly short distances, and we do not weigh much of anything at all. Surely three great beasts as great as you can handle a tiny bit of burden that two chickens would make." And so it was agreed. In the upper barn, Rat was listening. She looked at the beautiful little tree down below and thought, "Never have I seen a green tree in summer or winter looking as beautiful as that one does now, with all of its fine things around it. Oh, how those things sparkled. Oh, I wish I could go." And her husband said, "Travel to see the King of Kings? Humans hate rats. Nonetheless, I will go if they will let me. If it can be king for a camel and king for a sheep and king for a chicken, it can surely be king for a rat." And so they decided that they would try and go and went downstairs to ask. Camel said, "I do not see why not." At that moment, there was a flutter of wings and down came two crows. "We have listened, we have heard. We would like to see this king of camels and rats and other animals, and we would worship him, and we can fly long distances. We can keep up. We can spy the way. We can help out. Can we go? I don't know, said the camel. Humans hate crows. That may be, but our hearts are pure. Can we go? And so it was agreed. At that moment, spiraling down from the ceiling, came a great female spider, saying, I would like to go too, as would my husband. King for a camel, king for a spider. Humans are not fond of spiders either, but there is no harm in your joining our party. And so it was settled, and the animals all settled down, wondering how the next day would go. Inside the house, Babushka fell into an exhausted sleep. When she awoke the next morning, she thought, was it all a dream? But no, there on her table was some coins that had been left by the kings. And she went outside and she saw that all the animals were gone. And she thought, what a strange adventure this was. And she went back in to lay down. When the animals had left in the night, the animals that stayed behind looked at the tree that had been so beautiful. And one of the spiders said, we can decorate it. It won't be the same, but it'll be pretty. And she began to spin web from branch to branch, which glistened in the moonlight. Rats said, we have pretty things we have staved over the years. We can do this too. And they went into their secret holes and brought back out little pieces of foil and string and ribbons and things that they had gathered over the many years. And they put them on the tree, which began to look mighty fine indeed. Crows flew in and said, we have pretty things too. Some of us in our nests, we will put them on the tree. And so by morning, the tree that had been decorated by the kings was now decorated by the animals, all in honor of a king they never expected to see. When Babushka came out and looked at the tree, she was astounded. She walked around and around and said, there, and she pulled off the branch, a beautiful ruby ring, great-great-grandmother's long-lost ring. I searched for it as a child. My mother searched for it when she was a child. Her mother searched for it when she was a child. It has been lost for generations, but we have always hoped it was here somewhere. I should have had it. This would make a gift for the King of Kings. It truly would. I must have been meant to follow them. Is it too late? What can I do? She put the ring on her finger. She gathered up the chickens, hay, and drove the sheep and goats down the hillside into the village and said, I must follow the three strangers who came to me last night. I do not know which way they went. I do not know which way they will go, but I must follow them. Most of her neighbors said, old woman, do not be a fool. You will freeze to death. You will starve to death. You cannot follow these people. You cannot keep up with the animals as big as you say those creatures were. You are being very foolish. But a few came forward and said, a king of kings for all mankind, for all the world, that is a wondrous thing. We cannot go with us. We have children to raise and farms and businesses, but here, take this with you, some things to help you on your way. And so Babushka took their gifts. And the old Babushka traveled after the kings. We do not know whether she ever caught up with them, and there's no tell of her in Bethlehem. But we do know this, to this very day in many parts of Russia, in dead winter, around the 25th, old Babushka still travels the land. And where there are children who need something, truly need something, somehow there's always enough gift to go around. And as far as I know of, Babushka has been there every Christmas, even when it was illegal to celebrate her, and many a child has enjoyed the tale. I should have timed it. Do you know how long that ran, John?
Yeah, I did. It was 18 minutes.
I'll have to cut quite a bit out.
Yeah, I think you can cut off some of the beginning part is not as crucial. I
Yeah.
mean, it's good and it leads into the story, but I think that would be the best place to cut from.
Okay. I mean, I do have other Christmas tales. This is my own creation and I haven't told it in a couple of years. And I honestly do not anticipate any Christmas storytelling anywhere this year.
Yeah, it's a great story. I like it.
I like that story. I think it was the point of star.
Anyway, guys, I'm going to move my Zoom operations back to the bedroom so they can go back to the things they normally do at night.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll be moving around a bit for a few minutes.
Okay. All right. Who would like to be next? Do you want to go, Elizabeth? Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna try this. It's a short story. This story is from a book that Karen Kraut, one of our fellows here, she recommended when we had a Friends of the Library event, I think about 3 years ago, 2018, before the COVID and everything. So here it is. I don't have the title, so I apologize. It was this old couple. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to the book. This book that she presented, and she said what she told one of the stories there, is a book written for older people. So all the stories would be stories with old people in different situations. It is called From Here to the End of Life. So this is the story. It was this old couple. They lived somewhere on the coast by a really cold and stormy sea. And they were also close to a bit of a forest. And that was how they were making their living. So the old men will go in the woods and look for old pieces of wood, dry wood, fell on the forest ground, and pick up and come back in the village where they lived with small bundles of firewood and sell it. And this is how they were making their life. So it was a hard life, and they were old, and the weather over there was not really friendly. So it was a hard life. It was a hard life. And then one day, as the husband, the man, went in the woods, in the forest, he met this old person who proved to be an old forest fairy. And this person said, you know, I see you for years coming and picking up the wood from the ground, from the forest, from the forest floor. And I thought maybe I can help you a little bit. And I'm gonna give you this bag of gold coins. Take it home and try to use it very wisely, so would last for a while and will make your life and your wife's a little bit better. Well, he was very impressed, kind of scared in the beginning, but he accepted the gift and started going home with the bundle of wood that he collected, and start thinking about, well, I'm going to take this home, and the wife will have all kinds of ideas, and we are going to spend it very fast, and I better hide it for a while until we can sit down and talk and make a good decision. So he came home and very sneaky. Nobody saw him. He hid the bag with the gold coins under a pile of leaves and kitchen scraps that were somewhere farther from the house in a corner of their backyard. And went in the house, raised the wood, sold the wood, and everything was like everyday business. And the next day he left for his usual work. The wife, though, somehow found that bag of gold coins. When the man came back toward the evening, he went to inspect and see if the gold bag was there, was not there. So he went in the house really frantic and said, well, did you went around the backyard? What did you do today? And she said, oh yeah, I went about. I took some kitchen scraps to the back and look through that pile. And well, I found, I thought that, well, you know what? I kind of got ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go back a little bit. She went from the kitchen with the kitchen scrap on the pile. And as she saw the pile, she thought, oh, you know what? Maybe I can sell this to the farmer neighbor up the street, and then we will make a few coins there. And I'm gonna help with the household expenses. And this is what she did. So she didn't know it was a bag there. So the husband came home and he looked and he didn't see the pile of the leaves and the kitchen scrap. And he came in the house and he said, well, what happened with that pile of leaves in the corner? And I said, oh, well, don't worry about it. I clean it. And I sold it to the farmer up the hill, up the street. And I got this a few money here. Oh my God, he was frantic. What have you done? This happened, don't do it again. But he didn't tell her though that he had hidden there a bag of gold coins. Well, next time he went to the forest again to do his daily chores, daily work. And sure enough, around the tree came again the forest fairy. And that person knew what happened. What happened? Well, look what happened. My wife gave a pile of the leaves where I hid the money bag to a neighbor, and I lost everything. Well, you know what? That happened. I'm gonna still help you. And the fairy gave him another bag with gold coins. The same thing, he went home, he said, I'm gonna hide it for a while before we can talk. And he hid this under a pile of manure that he had somewhere in the back of the backyard, somewhere farther from the house. And then went back to the wife, and they followed their daily routine. Next time he comes home, he looks again, the pile of manure is gone. He comes home in the house, so what happened? Where is all the manure? Oh, I gave it to the neighbor down the street, and then I got this money, he was able to use it for his fields. Oh, that is just doesn't happen. That is too terrible. That is too terrible. Okay, well, that's what it is. Went back to the forest, go back to his hard work, met the fairy again. And, the fairy knew already, but he still told the story, what happened. And the fairy said, you know what? This is the last time. I am going to give you this fish that is made all of gold. Take it home and see what you do with it. Well, he was fed up with all this scheme that he had to hide it, and all that thing kept happening. He said, I am going to go home and I'm going to hang it over the front porch. So we'll be there for us to look at it and enjoy it. And maybe together we will make a decision what to do with it. This is what they did. So he went home and he said, look what I found in the forest, this goldfish. And we are going to put it here on the front porch to be like a nice light in front of the house. Okay, well, they put there, they were very happy. They had a nice meal together, even if it was very meager and modest, but they still had a good disposition and went to sleep. During the night, kind of late, early, very early morning, they heard this noise on the front porch, and they were like young men voices, and they were like cheerful and singing, and it was like an entire noise, like it was a big party there. They came outside with the night light to see what is going on. What was going on? Was going on this. A group of young people, they were fishing in the seas close to that coast. Night came, a storm started. Their boat was in the danger of being shipwrecked and smashed over the rocks under the water rocks. And they saw that light from the house, and they knew that they would be close to the shore, and they were able to steer the boat, and still the boat was pretty much damaged, but they did not drown, or the ship didn't, their boat didn't really completely break, and they got away with their lives. And they were so happy. They came to that house to see who was in that house that had a light that saved their lives. And from that time on, this group of people, of young people, will always have in their, always will take care of this old couple and will make sure that they have everything they need for their daily life. So that fish, that goldfish, actually did bring them a good living, protected from the difficulties of being old and poor. So that's the story.
Ew.
Nice.
So the goldfish shone and created the light.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. The goldfish was making that light, and then people in the boat used it like it was a star. How do we call that?
A lighthouse, like a light.
Yeah, a lighthouse. Yes, a lighthouse. So they knew they are close to a shore, so they won't perish in that storm.
All right. Thank you. All right. So, who would like to be next? We have a Nick. You want to volunteer to be next? Okay. Unmute yourself and I'll put the spotlight on you.
All right. This is one I'm just working on, and it's because of, well, what I think is a true ghost story. You see, most of you know that the Pasadena Library had this little problem recently, and we all had to move out very suddenly because the engineers who were looking at the building for something said, by the way, nothing is holding this building up in case of an earthquake. Um, and rather than stay in the world's shortest 4-story building, we all moved out. At least all the people moved out. But I got to thinking just a few days ago that nobody has moved the ghost. And you see, there is a ghost in that library, and we're even pretty sure we know who the ghost is. We're pretty sure that it's the ghost of Nellie Russ, who was the librarian at the old building in the 1890s and up until right before the new building was built. And the reason we think that it's her is because she haunts the cleaning crew. Now, you may think that's a very strange thing for a ghost to do, but in fact, at least one of the cleaning crew quit her job and asked to be reassigned to someplace else because there was this figure, and from the description, it was Nellie Russ. And she was kind of a quirky person when she was still alive. She kept her own stash of cleaning supplies in her desk in case no one else could clean something that she thought needed to be cleaned properly by her standards. And she also was a very knowledgeable woman who really cared about the history of where Pasadena was and with the rest of California. And so she started a collection of books on the history of California, and especially Southern California, and especially Pasadena. And when the old building was shut down, that collection got moved to the brand new 1927 building. But she was the one who started it. And it was after her death that that area and any place else where things might be in need of extra care, if they weren't kept up, a figure in a white dress that looked a lot like Nellie would show up and just sort of stand there glowering at the person who wasn't doing their job. But the thing is, now with the staff not there other than for very brief periods of time, no one's there after dark or before the sun rises in the morning, because the library was open until 9 o'clock at night, and then the cleaning crew would come in and do things later in the night. And that was when the ghost would come out. Well, now if the ghost of Nellie Russ comes out, the building's empty. There's no one there. In fact, if she even waits until dawn, there's still no one there. There are only people there for a very brief time during the day, and only a very small part of the building, nowhere near where she was watching the cleaning crew. And I started thinking about this, because this has been her home for 94 years. And what do you do when you're a ghost who no longer has anyone to haunt? And this is a difficult thing, because this is not an ordinary ghost. This was the ghost of someone who loved books so much that her desk drawer was filled with toxic chemicals that might someday be needed to clean a book that needed something like that. And frankly, she was a bit rough around the edges when it came to dealing with politicians who thought they knew better than she did as far as what needed to be done for things. And so it was that the ghost of Nellie now is without a haunting to do. But because she loved that collection of books so much, no one can imagine her leaving. If any place would be an eternity to stay in, it would be that collection of books she put together. That collection includes a 1787 vellum history of the operations of Father Sarah. It includes other things that are rare beyond belief, simply because she thought they were something that someday someone would want to read. And so I got to thinking about it and realized there's only one thing left for her ghost to do, and that is to read. because until that collection is used again, until that building is used again, she has all the time in the world to peruse anything that she wants that was from her day or even after her day. As long as it's been properly cleaned, of course, because she doesn't have her desk drawer anymore with the chemicals.
All right. Thank you, Nick.
This was so beautiful. I love stories with the libraries. That was so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, you were a librarian, right, Elizabeth?
Yeah. And you know what? It is a very eerie feeling when you are in the library after the library closes.
Uh-huh.
And I do have a story that is pretty creepy, especially not with, well, unfortunately it was not with ghosts, because with ghosts is good, they could be friendly. But this was with a person that I didn't know it was in the library after we closed. I saw him, and then 3 days after that, the police office of the campus sent a flyer with this man face.
Ooh.
So that was kind of scary. I wish it was a ghost, but it wasn't. So yeah, that was a beautiful story. Thank you.
Have you seen the ghost yourself, Nick?
No, but I've talked to a couple of the people who have.
Oof.
And it's, I mean, the description, it's clearly Nellie Russ, but it's a question of why is she there? And she only seems to haunt the cleaning crew who normally are there at night. The only time that anybody has witnessed her earlier was when our own sort of internal custodian ran across her at one point. And again, it's like their work is clearly being critiqued.
Yeah, that's a ghost with some unresolved OCD.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when people discovered the stuff she had in her desk, they kind of freaked out because she had several toxic cleaning products in her desk.
Oh, wow.
Is that something that would actually be used to clean books?
In the 1890s and early 20th century, there were several things that they used then, but we don't use anymore because they're not good for you.
Yeah.
Usually it's because they involve solvents that evaporated into the air that are bad for your lungs or things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, she had things like that in her desk because sometimes she felt she needed them.
Wow.
That's like my grandmother would clean my step grandpa's clothes because he worked, in a mechanic shop with gasoline, It's like, we don't do that anymore.
Well, gee, what could go wrong?
Yeah. She was very careful, but it was, I guess, a very effective way of getting the grease out of his clothing. It was like, oh my God.
Yes, it would act as a solvent for the oil-based stuff, but
Yes.
it's still not a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Gasoline fumes are not good to breathe.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's not so much the fumes as how easy it is to ignite it when it is in fume form.
Yeah. Well, that too.
Oh yeah, that.
So Adrian, do you have a story tonight?
I'm working on one for Sunday, so I don't have one. I was up at 3:30 this morning working on a gnarly college professor job application. So
Okay.
I'm focusing my energies for Sunday.
Right. And tell me what story are you planning on doing?
Oh, I'll have to email you the title. I'm looking at this point. I'm leaning towards the that one that I told a month or two ago, a couple months ago, about the young couple, separated, and he goes into the mill water, into the mill pond, and comes back out, and they don't recognize each other, and they're on the hillsides as shepherds. Anyway, that one was a couple months ago.
Okay.
I'm just trying to whittle that sucker down because it's got a lot going on.
Yeah, we want it to be around 10 minutes.
Yeah. You know, I'm always good at that.
Yeah.
So just takes work.
Yes, it does, for sure. Well, I have a story.
Yay.
Let me put myself on spotlight. There we go. So this story is a folk tale from Serbia. And I got it from a book by Dan Ketting called Stories of Hope and Spirit, Folk Tales from Eastern Europe. And Dan heard this story from his grandmother as he, got lots of his folk tales from his grandmother. And the name of the story is The King's Ears. A long time ago, there was a king, and his wife was expecting a baby. In fact, she was in labor, and he was pacing outside the room, worried about her, worried about the baby. Would it be a boy? Would it be a girl? Would it be healthy? And finally, the door opened and the midwife came out and said, "Your Majesty, you have a new son." But the king didn't wait to hear what else the midwife had to say, and he rushed into the room. And the queen was holding the baby boy out for the king to take. And she said, "He is a handsome young boy, but," and the king didn't wait to hear what she was going to say. He took the baby from her arms and held it up and was just so happy that he had a baby boy with a handsome face. And when he moved the blanket off the top of the baby's head to get a better look, his eyes grew wide and he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And the midwife said, "Your Majesty, things like this sometimes happen. I'm sure the baby boy will grow out of them." Well, the them that the midwife was talking about were two huge ears that looked like donkey ears. And the king thought, "This is not good. When he grows up to be a king, people will not respect him or obey him, a king with donkey ears." And so he and the queen decided to keep this a secret. And they paid the midwife in gold worth her weight, and gave her gold worth her weight, and sent her to a faraway country where she pledged to remain silent about the young boy's donkey ears. And so the king and queen never let anybody see the boy without his head being covered. When he turned 6, they had a crown fitted that would cover the ears. And as the boy grew older, they gave him bigger crowns. For he grew up to be a handsome young lad and eventually a handsome young man, but his ears grew with him. So nobody knew except the king and queen. And the queen would bathe him and cut his hair. And whenever he was in public, his ears were covered. Well, the boy grew up to be a young man, and his parents grew old and died. And so he became the new king. And he was a kind and just king, and the people respected him. But there was a problem. His royal hair kept growing, and his mother was not around anymore to cut it. So finally, he decided he needed to have his hair cut. So he summoned the royal barber, who cut the hair of everybody in the royal court. And they went to a private room, and the king took off his ears and said, "Now I want my hair cut fairly short." And the barber's eyes grew wide as he saw the king's ears, but he didn't say anything. And he cut the king's hair. And when he was done, the king said, "Now, did you notice anything unusual about me?" And the barber sort of hemmed and hawed, and he said, well, Your Majesty, you have ears like a donkey. The king took out his sword and cut off the barber's head. Bump, 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 the head rolled down. Well, in 2 or 3 weeks, when it was time to have his hair cut again, the king summoned a new barber, and the barber disappeared. And this went on for a while. Every 2, 3, 4 weeks, the king would summon a barber to cut his hair, and no one would see that barber again. Well, finally, there was only one barber left in the kingdom. And he was an old man who had a young apprentice who was 13 years old. And the king summoned that old man. And on the day he was supposed to come to give the king a haircut, the old man grew ill. And he told his young apprentice, I can't go. I'm sick. I don't want to get the king sick. I can't go cut his hair. You go. You've been trained. You can cut the king's hair. And so the young 13-year-old lad packed up the barber tools in a bag and set off for the palace. And when he arrived at the palace, the guards felt sorry for him because they knew every time a new barber went in, he never came back out again. And so the young boy went into the king's chambers, and the king was surprised to see a boy being sent to cut his hair. And the boy said, well, Your Majesty, I've been trained well. I can cut your hair. And so the king took off his crown, and the donkey ears popped out. And the boy thought they were marvelous. It reminded him of a story he had heard about brave warriors whose ears would grow every time they did a brave act or slayed a dragon or rescued someone. Their ears would grow. And so he cut the king's hair. And when he was done, the king said, now, do you notice anything unusual about me? And the boy smiled and he said, no, Your Majesty, I think you look wonderful with your haircut. And the king smiled and said, you keep our little secret and you will get to keep your head. And so the boy became the new royal barber, and the king was his only client. And the king grew to like the boy, and he started confiding in him. And he actually asked the boy's advice on matters of dealing with the people in the kingdom. And the boy always answered truthfully and was flattered that the king trusted him. Well, have you ever tried to keep a secret so precious you couldn't tell a living soul? It's not easy. And the boy worried that he might blurt out something and give away the king's ears. And he felt the stress and the burden of this secret, so much so that he began to become sickly. And eventually he was bedridden. And the old man, who was the barber that trained him, came to visit him. And he said, what is the matter, my son? And so the boy said, I have a secret so precious that I can't tell a living soul. Oh, said the old man, you can tell me, you can trust me. Oh no, said the boy, if I tell you, we will both lose our heads. Oh, then don't tell me, said the old barber. You could tell the priest. And the boy said, no, I can't tell a living soul. Well, said the old man, you know, my mother once told me, if I had a deep, dark secret, I needed to go out into the wild and dig a hole and tell my secret to the earth and then cover it up, and then I would feel better. Well, the boy had nothing to lose, so he decided to try it. And so he left the palace and he went out into the woods, and he found a place where, and he took a shovel with him, and he found a place that looked suitable to dig a hole, and he dug the hole, and he leaned down and he said, the king has the ears of a donkey. And then he covered up that hole with dirt. And you know what? He felt better already. He felt wonderfully better. It relieved the stress. And so he went back to the palace. Well, that night, a willow tree grew up out of that hole overnight. And the next day, some children came into the woods hunting for an appropriate material to cut to make a flute out of, or a whistle out of. And so they cut off some branches from the willow tree and whittled it down and sold them in the city as whistles. The problem was that when people would blow on the whistle, it didn't make a tune, it sang a song. The king has the ears of a donkey. The king has the ears of a donkey. The king has the ears of the donkey. The king, the king, the king, the king. The king has the ears of a donkey. And the king was sitting at a window in the palace, and he heard this song. Well, he was furious, and he had his guards go summon the young barber. And he brought him in. The guards brought him into the king, and the king said, "How could you betray me? I trusted you." And the young boy pleaded with the king, saying he didn't tell a single soul that he had dug this hole and told the earth. And so the king said, "Show me this." So the boy took the king out into the forest and came to the spot where he had dug the hole. And there was this willow tree growing. And the boy said, "That wasn't there yesterday. I don't know what happened." So the king took his sword and cut off a branch and whittled it down and into a whistle. And he blew on it. And the whistle went, "The king has the ears of a donkey. The king has the ears of a donkey. The king, the king, the king, the king. The king has the ears of a donkey." And so the king thought. And he thought with his heart this time. And he realized that the boy had not betrayed him. He hadn't told anybody. And he also realized that it was time that he lived the truth. And so he took off his crown, let the ears come out, and the king and his barber walked back to the palace with the ears showing. Now, some people smiled when they saw the ears. Some people even chuckled quietly. But they all still liked the king. He was a kind and just king. And he was able to continue to rule effectively. And when he finally died, he had had no children. But he made sure that his successor was the young barber who had grown up to be a wise advisor to the king. And that young man became the new king. And he was a very wise and gentle king as well. For he had learned a very valuable lesson. You can't judge a person by their outward looks. What matters is what is inside. Thank you. The King's Ears, a folktale from Serbia.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Wow.
I don't think I've told that story before.
I don't think so.
Yeah. And actually it came out fairly good. I'll have to time it. Maybe I'll even tell it at one of the celebrations.
Yeah.
You think it would be appropriate?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's got a nice positive ending. We all need stories like that right now.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah, Seth Meyers on his Late Show has started a segment called Stories We Could Use Right Now.
Right.
And they're all sort of really fun, sort of, people kicking butt for the right reasons kind of stories. And he's like, we need these stories.
So do we have anybody else? I think nobody else tell a story. Okay, I'm texting Angela, tell her that we're done. And now at this point, I think I'll just put on gallery view so we can see everybody. And this is a time for announcements. And so you can unmute yourselves. No one's actually going to be telling a story. And so I'll be first. We have the joint celebration this Sunday. And it's free, but you have to register for it on the SAC website. And if you go to the England Valley Storytellers website, in fact, I could even maybe show you. Well, anyway, on the front page of the website, it has a place to click to go to the joint celebration webpage that I made. And on that joint celebration webpage, it has a link to the SAC site to register. Or actually, I think it takes you right to might take you right to the Zoom page to register. Anyway, you can get there from our webpage. And then we have the live celebration on Saturday night, November 20th. The joint celebration is Sunday, November 14th. And the Saturday night one starts at 7, and ticket holders will have to show proof of vaccination, and everyone will have to wear masks inside except for the storyteller. But when they're done, they put a mask on. So the audience will all have masks. I don't think we're going to require the teller to wear a mask.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to project your voice with a mask on.
There actually are masks designed to work with a microphone, but it's annoying and it would be difficult to get them here in time if we wanted them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I use them, they're singers masks. I use one on Sunday morning when I sing with the band at church, and
Yeah.
they help. It's just, yeah, it's still just hard to see your face because it's kind of covers a lot of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think maybe we can have the microphone not at the edge of the stage, but set back a little bit so the teller isn't as close to the audience as normally.
Yeah, it's a good idea. How many people do we have for that concert? We have what, 8 people telling?
Well, so far we have 5, but I've invited Ellen Harper to tell a story and sing a song. And she hasn't decided yet. So I'm hoping we have 6, which is actually, not a bad number.